Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be checking out Gotrek and Felix, Warhammer's greatest and biggest nobodies by PancreasNoWork. Big thank you to BattleChicken for the recommendation. You've been asking for this one for a bit. Figure we might as well throw you a bone there, BattleChicken, yet again, and check out some more Warhammer Fantasy. I really do enjoy it. Actually, I will say Age of Sigmar, I will say I'm less of a fan of, but the old world fantasy Warhammer, I'm fucking all for. I'm all for it. I really enjoy it. The Total War games I find very cool. They pique my interest in it a little bit. Been playing those a touch here and there as well. So I've been dabbling a little bit. You know what I'm saying? It's not like I haven't gained any external knowledge in the meantime. I've dabbled a touch. Not a ton, but a touch. And I find it very interesting. I hear Gotrek and Felix, group of badasses here. Two guys, obviously. I shouldn't say group. Two guys. And they're pretty badass. I hear they get a lot done. I hear they're pretty godlike in their abilities. Who is it? Gotrek, I think. It's just kind of like a mad lad. One of them's the dwarf, right? I'm pretty sure he's a slayer. I could be incorrect. I don't want to misterm. I don't want to get too far into it here. I want to check it out for myself. PancreasNoWork obviously makes fantastic videos. I'm excited to check that out here today. Obviously, I'm subscribed already, as you can see there. We're gonna leave a like on this video because I expect great quality things. If you guys enjoy, make sure you do so as well. Leave a like on this video. Subscribe for more content from me, and of course, yeah. Leave your recommendations down in the comments below. If you want to, come on down, join our Discord. Awesome to see you guys there. So, you can give me recommendations there. You can come join our discussions, play some games with us. Come join our Discord, guys. Awesome to see you guys there. And, of course, big thank you to all of our members, all of our Hastati, our Principe, of course, Hobbit, and, of course, Dagenhart, and our Prefect Fear. I appreciate you guys. You guys inspire me to make more content for you guys every single day, of course. And, yeah, without any further delay, say we get right into this video. Gotrek and Felix, PancreasNoWork. Captions are on there. Quality is good. We're going to full screen. Let's get it.
The hero or heroes are down on their luck, it usually means something like in The Empire Strikes Back. The good guys have been hurt and the bad guys are winning for sure, but there's a clear message of hope for the future in some way. Whether it be a prophecy about the good guys unfolding, new allies being found, or any other number of things, something is going to go well for them in the near future. Things aren't looking good for the heroes, but things are definitely going to get better. What the heroes being down on their luck usually doesn't mean is them being forced to take on a job as bouncers in a shitty tavern in the poorest quarter of an industrializing city in between saving the world. But
holy shit,
Felix aren't most heroes. And yet despite all that, I think they're the most enjoyable Warhammer characters to read about. I couldn't care less about the Emperor of Mankind, maybe or maybe not, considering his sons to be nothing more than tools. Would you damn sure want to read about Gotrek and Felix murdering their 50th monster that week before Gotrek drinks himself to a coma and Felix finds the 50th woman that week to fall in love with? Anyway,
goddamn.
To all that. So
it seems it seems not to pause right off the bat here, but it seems kind of like I don't know a whole lot about the Witcher lore, I'll be honest, but from what I do know, obviously Geralt and Dandelion. It seems kind of like almost kind of like that kind of duo in a sense, like that same kind of like relationship, One's the minstrel fucking getting all the ladies, fucking all the women, and the other's like an awesome like monster slayer. It looks like kind of like that's kind of like the duo ship we have here, which is an awesome duo ship. I'd love to see that in any type of like media, I suppose, sci-fi as well. It's really cool. Can do a lot of cool stuff with that. Yeah, no, this already seems like a very like interesting concept, especially given the world of old world Warhammer, obviously. So no, this already seems interesting. Let's see.
Gotrek and Felix murdering their 50th monster that week before Gotrek drinks himself to a coma and Felix finds the 50th woman that week to fall in love with. Anyways, we'll get to all that. So what's this video going to be about? Well, Gotrek
a lot of
Felix,
books,
of course. But instead of going through their entire series, because that would take about 10 hours, I'm going to talk about who they are and what you can expect out of them. Now, of course, there'll be spoilers. I'll just be honest with you, but I'll try and avoid anything major. For instance, I'm not going to bring up shit about any major motivations some characters might have, unless it's like Felix, where you find out their motivation about 5 seconds into the book.
Fair enough.
Why is Gotrek a slayer? We'll read the goddamn series and you'll find out. But I'm still going to talk about things that happen in the series. I mean, it's unavoidable. And
he does look badass, and he is a slayer. That's good.
Well, if nothing else, go and see what Gotrek's series is called in Age of Sigmar. You see what's missing? Yeah, I know. Yeah. And as one final note, I read 90% of these books back to back in the span of about 4 months because I bought them in those omnibuses where you get 3 main books and a few short stories. So if I say something happened in X story when it really happened in Y story, please forgive me. It all just kind of exists in this giant mush labeled Gotrek, Felix, and Snorri in my brain. But
I want to say like that's probably the best way to buy those books too. Like conveniently nowadays, if you can't get like an original copy, obviously, like when I got Gaunt's Ghost, it's in an omnibus, right? You get couple books for the price of one kind of thing. It's very convenient way to buy them. So I absolutely don't blame them for that. It does start to meld together a little bit.
Give me, it all just kind of exists in this giant mush labeled Gotrek, Felix, and Snorri in my brain, but we'll get to him later as well. Anyways, let's start with the dwarf, the myth, the legend himself, Gotrek Garnison. Might as well start with his job. Gotrek is a slayer. A slayer
Right.
in Warhammer Fantasy is a dwarf who done goofed real bad and now has to die in glorious battle to redeem himself. Sometimes a dwarf takes the slayer oath for something truly dishonorable, like neglecting your military duties leading to the downfall of a whole lot of dwarfs. Other times it's because Olaf Alebeard lost a month's income of gold coins gambling, and the only option left to him is clearly suicide by monster. To avoid spoilers, I'm not going to tell you why Gotrek took the slayer oath, but either way, he done goofed and is now a slayer. There's a big problem here though. Gotrek's kind of the worst slayer alive because he sucks at dying. Every time he gets in a fight with something, it gets brutally murdered. Humans, dark elves, beastmen, greater demons, doesn't matter in the least. If you try to fight Gotrek one-on-one, you're going to die a messy death.
Gotrek.
Outnumbering him just means more.
Gotrek.
In the last Gotrek and Felix book, just called Slayer, Felix refers to Gotrek taking on a Chaos Lord and his warband as nature taking its course. Gotrek
what the fuck?
He hates this. He's not actively suicidal, at least no more than anyone else who's actively seeking out death in combat, but the series takes place over the course of roughly 20 years, and Gotrek was a Slayer for longer than that. That's several decades of just not being able to die despite all aspects of your culture and religion saying, time to die now, champ. This is both because of a magical axe keeping him alive and giving him strength, which every time someone observes it, they say it courses with divine energy, so you can't say I'm spoiling that because it's brought up every 5 goddamn minutes, and because either way, he's just that much of a stubborn bastard. It drives him to take on more and more dangerous quests, which is oftentimes the driving force behind the plot of the Gotrek and Felix books.
I see.
Despite his despair at being alive, he's got a good heart deep down, so he always goes on another adventure to help and maybe finally get himself killed. Though
I want to say it's very, very interesting. Like a Slayer's whole purpose is to go out there and like die, right? Like they've sinned in like the eyes of their culture, whatever have you, right? But he's just fucking too good to die. And I don't know what the abilities of this axe are. I don't know if he's going to get into that at all. I wonder just how much that like helps him, or if it's just like the fact that he himself is goated. You know what I'm saying? Like if the weapon is like the main thing keeping alive, or if it's just him, you know. I'm sure like you find out in the books. I'm sure it's not going to be any major spoilers in this, but damn, like I'm already kind of interested, you know what I'm saying? Like he seems like a badass character. Seems like they really like this battle scene looks fucking crazy. And this is from Total Warhammer 2. Damn, I don't know if I have this DLC. If I do, I should go check it out. Play it a little bit, you know?
He's got a good heart deep down, so he always goes on another adventure to help and maybe finally get himself killed. Though keep in mind, when I say Gotrek's a good person deep down,
Gotrek. Gotrek.
When a character is called a jerk with a heart of gold or something like that, they're like a Marvel movie character where they're basically a saint, but they say sarcastic things every now and then. If Felix isn't holding him back, Gotrek will happily kill a man just for spilling his beer, and on one occasion almost murdered a ship full of high elves because one of them refused to step aside when Gotrek had to use the bathroom.
Oh shit!
Not for kids though, and usually
that's fair though.
A horde of refugees to their fate, at least. So yeah,
usually
he's a good person. Like Minds of Moria deep, but you know, it's still there. Until the AOS books, we rarely get the full extent of Gotrek's thoughts, and I haven't gotten to reading those yet because I'm still reading the last of the fantasy series at a rate of 1 page per month because I don't want to run out of Gotrek and Felix, but I digress. Much of the time, Gotrek appears to be nothing more than a brutal killing machine who enjoys battle for its own sake as much as it offers a chance at redemption. When the books get combat heavy, it's almost like he stops being a character in his own right and more like a force of nature. And
what the fuck?
There are times in the series where Felix has to plan around Gotrek's bloodlust as the main obstacle in his path. He's not an idiot though, don't get me wrong. In fact, there's a very good scene where he uses a trap and ambushes to take down a whole lot of enemies in one of the short stories. And when another Slayer questions why he doesn't just jump in their head first, he says that Grimnir expects them to die doing their very best, so why wouldn't he use his head every now and then? Even with all of that,
that's a good explanation.
We see the series through Felix's eyes, we see just how confusing and alien Gotrek can be to a human. In fact, the Gotrek and Felix novels in general are really great at hammering home that in Warhammer, the dwarves truly do have a culture that's almost alien to humanity. Gotrek usually being the prime example of this, but there are plenty of other dwarfs that feature in the series.
Also, I just want to real quick, not to stop here. I really want to give like, you know, credence to the goated music choice from PancreasNoWork's Age of Mythology music, man. I feel it, brother. Fucking great soundtrack to use, and it works perfectly. So many applications for it. Age of Mythology just has a fucking fantastic soundtrack. Go check it out if you haven't, because like, man, It's a good soundtrack.
Humanity. Gotrek usually being the prime example of this, but there are plenty of other dwarfs that feature in the series. They're not just shorter and greedier people that eat rocks for nourishment. Things they consider to be normal are absolutely insane to humans.
Very cool that he actually uses his head.
Much of the time you might think, wow, Gotrek
he's not just trying to die, per se.
That? And you know what? He is a shitbag. Because every now and then you'll get even other dwarves telling them he needs to cool it with the attitude. But
really?
Every now and then he'll do something that makes you realize that he still has things he wants in life other than death by big scary thing. That he does in fact care about a very, very small selection of people in the world. Chief among that number being, of course, his co-star Felix Jaeger, or Harry Jaeger as you'll often hear him referred to as. Especially if you play Total War where he screams his name out every time you click on him. Felix is the son of a burgeoning Empire merchantman who runs a very successful business doing something. I'm pretty sure in the end times they were shipping lumber around. Realistically though, I'm pretty sure his father would sell orphan slaves if he thought it would turn a profit.
Goddamn.
Felix and his brother were supposed to take over the family business so the Jaeger family could finally become the nobles they deserved to be. Then Felix decided that he wanted to be a poet, which pissed his family off, went to college to do just that, and accidentally killed someone in a duel over whether or not violent protest was an acceptable form of protest. What a suddenly relevant backstory, I gotta say. As I'm writing this, I'm realizing that the comment section is gonna look like a goddamn 4chan. Anyways, to move on as quickly as I can, he was expelled for it.
I like how he literally went to the Bard's College, engaged in a fucking duel, killed somebody, and I'm guessing he's probably going to get kicked out or something here. Something's going to happen to him. I'm assuming it's like the case of both these characters are very much disgraced in their own right by like their own community, if you will, their own like family, their own culture per se. So it's a very interesting like duo-ship here that you have going on here. I'm really liking how the story like, you know, like how he's explaining it, and I can kind of see like, you know, like how this story kind of goes, and I'm really liking it so far. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm sure there's so many nuances. I'm sure they get up to so much shit. I really like would like to read these novels almost in a sense to find out for myself, because like it just seems like a story that I very much would like. You know what I'm saying? It seems like a story that like is comedic, also with a tone of seriousness. But you know, it's almost like that Witcher kind of like vibe story to it. I really enjoy that. You know.
Damn 4chan thread. Anyways, to move on as quickly as I can, he was expelled for, you know, murdering someone accidentally.
Yeah, expelled.
He was a key figure in something called the Window Tax Riots. A very Revolutionary War-y kind of backstory. I like it. During these riots, Felix was almost run down by 6 of the Reichsguard, Karl Franz's finest, whereupon Gotrek saved him by murdering 6 of the Reichsguard, Karl Franz's finest. You'll find that's a running theme whenever Felix is really in danger, because like I said earlier, anything that gets close to Gotrek dies a horrible, horrible death. They both got blackout drunk, Felix to drown out the trauma, and Gotrek because why not? Felix swore an oath to be Gotrek's rememberer and record his death for posterity because Gotrek has a very subtle but noticeable ego. And the moment he woke up from his hangover, he realized that dwarfs take their oaths very seriously, and he was now Gotrek's whipping bitch. It was actually pretty funny early on, because at first he thought about casually telling Gotrek he wasn't going to stick with them for all this. Then some tragic things happened to Felix and some others, and he also saw how Gotrek was a living tornado of knife crime and thought better of it. Now, since Felix is the one whose point of view we most often get, and Gotrek is his much more competent companion, it might be easy to say that Gotrek is the Jurgen to Felix's Caiaphas Cain, which I guess isn't the worst way to get a 40k fan to read these novels, but I don't think it's entirely correct either.
I want to say, like, yeah, like there is a comparison there, and it is kind of interesting that like we watched Caiaphas Cain, like, you know, on our last stream there, so I kind of do have like a bit of a reference for what he's talking about here. But I want to say too, very cool. Like, you know, the fact that he basically swore like to be his rememberer, you know what I'm saying, to write down, chronicle what happens with Gotrek here, like what he gets up to, what he does, how he dies in battle. And basically people are after him, I'm assuming. So like, you know, it's very convenient that he's with this fucking badass that can't die essentially. So it kind of works out, you know, it kind of works out. And I'm sure like he gets up to some crazy shit here, like alongside Gotrek. Like he probably might regret it a little bit, but imagine the shit you'd see with this fucker around. Like the shit he takes on and apparently lives, from what you guys tell me, is fucking nothing short of like godlike. So yeah, I imagine you'd see some shit for sure. As much as it would suck, it would also be very cool.
This isn't the worst way to get a 40k fan to read these novels, but I don't think it's entirely correct either. Their characters are very different, and to be honest, the only things that they really have in common are that there's 2 of them, and one of them is a little bit more competent in a fight than the other.
Right.
Cain, Felix ultimately has no real reason to keep being heroic. In fact, there's a few times where he has a chance to get away from Gotrek and leave his oath behind, and he chooses not to for one reason or the other. Sure, each of them sometimes get in a situation where fighting now is the best chance to not die later, but in Felix's case, there's just as many times where he chooses to fight of his own volition. Also, unlike
they're very different
Felix doesn't
characters.
have a reputation to worry about. There's no case where he'll lose the respect of those under him if he doesn't actively fight. Oftentimes, he chooses to fight alongside Gotrek for no other reason than he thinks it's the right thing to do, and on occasions, there's a few times where he's just as ready to kill as Gotrek is. He's also not a coward. At first reading the series, you might think I'm crazy for saying that, but hear me out. Initially, Felix is just some college kid in over his head. He learned fencing at school, but that's all he has for combat experience. So even fighting against a single goblin at first is a worrying thing because it's real life or death combat. He's not instantly a video game protagonist. He has to learn his skills and adapt, which makes the books honestly.
And Gotrek is just a fucking insane maniac.
He barely knows what he's doing to being Zoro from One Piece. Feels very relatable. You know what, Felix? I too would be shitting my pants profusely at this moment, only in my case, it would probably be literal. The other reason he sometimes comes across as weak is that Gotrek is incredibly overpowered, and the enemies he fights are a few leagues beyond anyone who isn't Gotrek.
Literally.
A D&D campaign where one person was incredibly overpowered, so the DM had to throw increasingly strong enemies at the party to create a meaningful sense of threat, but that also meant that everyone who wasn't the overpowered asshole was just getting their shit rocked. That's what the daily life of Felix Jaeger is like.
Yeah.
Incoming, but I would also like to give you a piece of knowledge about that kind of player.
I do want to say too, like on what he was saying a little bit earlier there on Cyphus Kane, like they don't seem like the same characters. Like Kane very much seems like he resembles Blackadder. As Andrew was saying there, like that makes a lot of sense to me. You know what I'm saying? I can definitely see that. I do not get these vibes at all from these characters, from Gotrek and Felix here. I do not get that sort of vibe at all. Like with Kane, it was a lot more like I'm doing this because like, you know, I'm kind of forced into it in a sense, and if I don't, it's like, oh shit, you know. But we definitely saw him like, you know, do some non-heroic things like when the opportunity arose, but it was only just because like, you know, fuck it, I don't want to die here. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to like get my ass killed, like so like I'm just gonna leave kind of thing. And hope is lost anyway. Like everyone else is pulling out, you know, I might as well, you know, kind of thing. So I think that's very, very interesting how he like fails upwards versus these characters do not seem like they fail upwards. It seems like they actively potentially seek out shit to like succeed. You know what I'm saying? I feel like Kane doesn't seek out anything. You know what I'm saying? He just kind of gets it. These characters, I think, seek it out a little bit more. I feel like I could be wrong. I haven't read the books, but that's the feeling I have. Like that's the interpretation I'm getting here.
Jaeger is like. Tangent incoming, but I would also like to give you a piece of knowledge about that kind of player. If they bring up how their character isn't really that overpowered before anyone even says anything remotely about that topic, they're an asshole. Because they're thinking about how people are going to say they're overpowered, which means they're very aware of I'm
trying not to talk too much throughout this video just because he talks fast,
doing
you
that
know?
exact thing, I'd just like to say, fuck you. You're the reason everyone else is looking at their phone during a party fight. I know
right.
Some of you are listening to me right now who've done that. You know who you are. At least one of the friends I've played with who's certainly listening to this at some point admits he makes overpowered builds, which at least he admits it. When you admit something like that, it takes away 90% of the anger. Unlike our other friend who makes overpowered builds of OP classes he found on the homebrew D&D website and then claims that 3 4d10 dice plus 8 worth of damage attacks a turn with a 12 plus to hit modifier isn't broken because he has a charisma stat of 9 to balance out all the other ones being 17 or higher.
I will say that shit kind of pisses me off. And like a party-based game like that, like it's a role-playing game. Like you got to play your character with some faults. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not saying intentionally make your character bad per se, but like nobody's perfect, right? And I feel like in games like D&D, if you're not representing that properly, like that's kind of an issue. You know what I'm saying? Like you definitely should try to some degree in my mind. You know, that's all it is.
Fire isn't broken because he has a charisma stat of 9 to balance out all the other ones being 17 or higher. But I'm wildly digressing by this point, so let's get back to the angry dwarf and Warhammer Fantasy's most unlucky man. Back to comparing him to Kane, Felix is also much more honest. Caiaphas Kane plays down his achievements, both because he thinks he's just a coward and because he knows that's what the sort of character he pretends to be would do. Felix, meanwhile, actually is that sort of modest hero. He genuinely doesn't think he's doing all that much special and even says the classic, "I'm just doing what anyone would do in my position" line. One time he briefly wields a hammer that due to magic only a dwarfish hero should be able to wield, and he tosses it like Thor at a bloodthirster and cold clocks him with it. It's what allows Gotrek to kill that bloodthirster because otherwise the demon was going to kill him and end the book series about a dozen early. And at the end of the book, all he learned from the experience was that his hand hurts from holding the lightning hammer, and for some reason the dwarfs are all looking at him like some sort of mythical figure, which just makes him vaguely uncomfortable. And every
what
now
the
and then
fuck?
you get a point of view of someone facing them, and usually goes something along the lines of, "Holy crap, this dwarf is a monster. Screw that. I'm gonna go fight this scrawny blonde on next to him and, oh hey, what's this sword poking out of my chest doing there? It's like Gotrek is Goku and Felix is Krillin. Everyone else forgets that Krillin could blow up a planet too if he felt like it when standing next to Goku, but imagine trying to mug Krillin on the street. Say goodbye to your kneecaps, Chucklehead. And honestly, Gotrek and Felix complement each other as characters a lot more than Caiaphas and Jurgen do. Jurgen, as badass as he is, don't get me wrong, is almost just a plot device. A
little bit, yeah.
But thankfully, because Jurgen is
that's the feeling I got a little bit.
In the galaxy, the hive mind was disrupted long enough for Kane to pull it a win. He enables Kane to do his thing, and that's kind of it. Meanwhile, Gotrek and Felix both do things on their own. There's times they're separated from one another, and it actually feels like both of them are missing something vital, rather than, oh, Felix doesn't have Gotrek around, how will he handle not having his get out of jail free card? Despite this, they're each completely valid characters.
That's reasonable. Yeah, that's reasonable.
Now has. Though, of course,
Duggan, do my bidding. Like
they wander the old world looking for things to kill Gotrek, and also the rest of the world because they've ended up pretty much everywhere. They fought alongside and against Tomb Kings. They fought plenty of orcs.
Alongside?
In the Mountains of Morn. Hell, they helped fight a revolution in Araby, which I'm pretty sure accounts for like 80% of all Araby lore. Wherever they go, you can be assured of 3 things. Gotrek is going to fail to die, and it said kill whatever he hoped would do him in. Felix is going to fall in love with a woman to some extent, and whatever amount of money the two make is going to disappear by the next book. Turns out it's a good thing Felix never joined the family business, because he would have killed it before anything managed to get to Gotrek. At one point, they were involved with Willem Nagash.
I really like how, like, straight up, like, they're always poor, though. Like, they get paid a shitload to do these jobs. They get paid, like, an absolute fuckload. But it's just the case of, like, you know, I'm assuming Gotrek fucking just, like, drinks all of it away. Felix probably, like, you know, like, whores and gambles it all away. You know what I'm saying? Like, they each are, like, you know, they're good people, but they have, like, vices. You know what I'm saying? They each have their own vices. And so they're always just fucking poor and on the move, looking for, like, the next, like, paycheck. You know what I'm saying? They're, like, wandering badasses. I fucking really like that. It's a very, very cool story, I would think, in, like, this type of world. Especially because of just how much they travel and whatnot, I feel like.
Family business, because he would have killed it before anything managed to get to Gotrek. At one point, they were involved with Willem Nagash's magical artifacts, which scared the ever-loving shit out of the wizard investigating it when he realized just what he was holding. They fought Kemmler and Krell, they fought a dragon ogre. Really, if there's more than one of something in the Warhammer world, Gotrek and Felix have almost certainly fought and killed one of them. They even had an adventure with Teclis once. Yes, that Teclis.
Really?
He was afraid of Gotrek. For reference, Teclis can nuke entire armies at once if he's so inclined, and this angry midget scared him. The only reason Gotrek didn't brain him was because Felix needed assistance only Teclis could provide at the time. Imagine how the times would have turned out if that happened. Probably for the better, honestly. It's also really funny how in the epilogue of the book, Teclis wakes up alone and finds out that Gotrek left him and drags Felix along with him. And he wakes up alone in a ruin that's surrounded by orcs and chaos followers, and is just like, thanks guys, really appreciate that one. Funnily enough though, despite the fact they keep wandering into situations that would make them heroes in any other story, for one reason or other, they never go beyond the realm of first level D&D characters in terms of their living conditions.
Literally.
One reason is that they're still technically wanted criminals in the Empire. I mean, Felix
Seriously?
started a massive tax riot and Gotrek murdered 6 of the Emperor's personal guard. They're not
That's hilarious.
Welcome back in Altdorf, and until the end times, Felix never really shakes the fear that someone's going to recognize them. So if only for that reason, they often lay low when they're in the Empire.
I'll be completely honest. They're pretty recognizable. I mean, fucking dwarf with, like, massive axe that's powerful as shit and makes you physically feel that, and fucking poet. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's pretty, like, this is a pretty recognizable duo, I feel like. If they walked into the Empire and just got seen by some guards, I feel like it'd be like, oh shit, that matches a pretty prompt description, you know what I'm saying? Goddamn.
Really shakes the fear that someone's going to recognize them. So if only for that reason, they often lay low when they're in the Empire. Another reason is that Gotrek, being a slayer, doesn't really give a Skaven's ass about accumulating wealth and building a life for himself. He's trying to end his own after all, so when all is said and done, he sits down for a single heroic feast to enjoy some food and ale, and then says, alright manling, time to wander around the Empire some more and hope we trip over another beastman herd. The inciting instances of all this stuff are pretty different enough that they're not just copy and paste between books, but there's 2 common themes. One is that someone wants them to do something, Gotrek says no, and Felix says that surely wherever they'd be going would have a mighty doom waiting for him, so they end up going. The other is that someone promises Gotrek a mighty doom if they do something, and Felix gets roped into it because of his oath. And then they go have some crazy adventures, usually meeting some genuinely interesting side characters who... they're side characters in a Warhammer novel. Let's just say they have a limited shelf life. Despite the being called Gotrek and Felix, Felix is certainly more the main character than Gotrek. It's almost always from his point of view, in third person granted, but still, so we see all these events happening through his eyes. Over the course of the series, you can see how they develop as comrade-at-arms, and sometimes if you squint, you can almost call them friends. And you also see Felix get the shit kicked out of him. Like, a lot. But beyond the
goddamn
ones, there's 4 more characters I'd really like to cover, because I love all of them. I'm gonna go in ascending order of how much I like the characters, but really they're all a great addition to the series. First off is Ulrika Magdova Stragov, who bears the honor of having the single most Slavic name in all of Warhammer.
Holy shit.
Destroying Firstborn characters. She even has her own trilogy of books. A trilogy I highly recommend you don't Google search if you don't want massive spoilers for Gotrek and Felix. In fact, just don't look her up until you get about halfway through all of the Gotrek and Felix books. Pretend she doesn't exist, except for right now because I need my average watch time to stay up. I also
of course
an arc of her that wasn't either a massive spoiler or a softcore.
That's relatable. I feel that shit.
Model she got a while ago because that's all you're gonna be seeing for the next minute. Anyways, Ulrika is the daughter of a Kislavite minor noble. She's good at horse riding, swordsmanship, or I guess swordswomanship, and is one of the women of the series Felix fell hardest for. She's also one of the women of the series Felix was hardest for. She's on and off between being a main and a side character, and I will say no more to avoid spoiling.
Main or side chick, I understand.
She wants to be her own protagonist too. She deserves it, I say. Sometimes she's a bit of a bitch, other times she's a wonder to have on the page and add some character that no one else does to the series. At the very least, she's a nice distraction from his usual company of suicidal dwarfs. Good character. Felix is down bad for her. That's all I gotta say on her. Needs
goddamn.
Rule 34. Next up is Max.
More Rule 34. What?
Who alongside Gotrek is the other character who makes regular appearances.
Holy shit.
Overpowered as balls. At one point he says, I am neither Teclis nor Nagash, and he's right. He's still overpowered as hell though. Apparently light magicians can heal you. Did you know that? Because Max can cure your Black Death right up. Even if it's
really?
by having tiny demons in your body. Doesn't matter.
Holy shit.
It right up. He can also blast several dozen enemies at once with magical light, send his consciousness away from his body like he's no clipping out of it, and make protective wards that completely immunize people to chaos until their battery runs out. So,
what the fuck?
Strong wizard. He's also introduced around the same
I can see how he'd be very, very powerful.
A couple of books and a dick measuring contest over who gets to be with her.
I can definitely see how a character like this would be fucking insanely a good compliment to both Gotrek and Felix there. Like, holy shit, like having kind of like an immunity to chaos heals, you know what I'm saying? Holy shit. Yeah, you definitely want this guy with you. I'm sure this guy probably saves Felix's ass quite a little bit.
At the same time as Ulrika, and he and Felix spend the next couple of books in a dick measuring contest over who gets to be with her. It kind of wanders back and forth between who's winning the battle for the Ulrikussy. As a side note, my father is reading Gotrek and Felix because I lent him the first book, and I'm incredibly excited for when he stumbles across this video and hears his son say the word Ulrikussy. That aside, he's incredibly wise and smart, and a smartass, but not in the usual Marvel way where he's a quip or comment every other sentence. Every now and then he'll just say something dry and vaguely mocking that usually starts another measuring contest with Felix before a chaos invasion interrupts them.
I see.
The story is oftentimes
so I like how
the game can cut through an entire.
I like how they do straight up like have a dick measuring contest, like him and Felix. Like I said, he probably saves Felix a bit. He probably does. But they're straight up just like petty towards each other still, which is fucking hilarious. I really like that dynamic.
Or a chaos invasion interrupts them. Max's role in the story is oftentimes to justify how the gang can cut through an entire horde of enemies, but also not just one-shot the main bad guy. He takes care of.
Is this some Halo OST now we're listening to?
Warhammers like handling unstable nuclear material, so Gotrek and Felix swoop in at the end to save the day. Again, though, he's still a badass, make no mistake. He's like the tier of mage right below Teclis and Nagash, which still means that if he was in Total Warhammer, he'd be a legendary lord or hero. Almost nothing can stand up to him, and it's really fun to read the interactions between him and Felix as they waver back and forth between good friends and two parts of a love triangle. Next up is the second to the last one I'd like to mention, Melikai Makaisan. He's a dwarf slayer, which is a running theme with the recurring dwarf characters you might notice.
Holy
like
shit.
Most other slayers, though,
this slayer looks badass.
Death oath by creating the most outlandish inventions possible and taking them to battle. What sort of inventions, Pancreas? I'm glad you asked, viewer. He made a repeating crossbow. I believe he invented parachutes, so that's pretty helpful for gyro.
Holy shit.
Pilots. Might not sound like the most interesting invention, that last one, but if you try and test a parachute and it doesn't work, you're gonna meet doom pretty damn quickly. Oh, and he built the Hindenburg.
That's facts.
And then covered it in armored plating. The one in the books apparently isn't even the first one he built, but he called the previous one something like the Unbreakable or whatever, so I don't think I even need to elaborate on what happened to that one. He's incredibly cheerful, not only for a dwarf, but especially a slayer, and
I was gonna say, this guy seems like, I just want to see a picture of him. He seems awesome, like an inventor slayer. He's using like ranged weapons instead of axes. Like he seems really outside of the box as far as like any slayer that I've ever heard of goes, you know? So I think this is really, really interesting. I think this character is really cool. And just the way he looks so happy, you know?
To elaborate on what happened to that one. He's incredibly cheerful, not only for a dwarf, but especially a slayer, and he's a mad genius. I wouldn't say that he's super funny, but it's just so exciting to read when he's on the page. He makes everything just seem like a high fantasy adventure novel, which is a nice breath of fresh air before it goes back to being Warhammer and all grimdark and depressing again. At one point, he gets blasted by magic and just stands there and takes it like the Senator Armstrong meme. He even says something along the lines of, "Your magic can't hurt a dwarf," which is somewhat close to both Nanomachine's son and You Can't Hurt Me, Jack. So now I'm going to accuse Metal Gear Rising of ripping off Warhammer Fantasy.
Holy shit.
About him, I highly recommend having your phone nearby when you're reading books that he features in, because they gave him a Scottish accent, and it is goddamn illegible. Now, I don't think a Scottish accent is actually that hard to understand verbally. I mean, I understand it, but reading that shit, yeah, good luck, bud.
I understand, yeah.
I've ever had to stop reading because I had to look up what in the hell anything he was saying meant, and I didn't have him any other way. Rock on, Mackayson. Here's to seeing you as a legendary lord in immortal empires. Finally, the best slayer and best dwarf ever, Snorri Nosebiter. Now,
Jesus.
Interesting dwarf. Initially, his role is purely comic relief with a smidgen of body horror. All slayers dye their hair red and shape it into a crest. Snorri, on the other hand, shaved his head bald and jammed 3 nails into his skull he painted red. Jesus Christ, dude.
That is pretty radical.
Long before each of them became a slayer, and he's one of the few people that Gotrek counts as one of his friends, even if he won't admit it. He also refers to himself in the third person whenever he speaks, and generally talks like someone who has dropped down the path up to the mountain a few too many times. But he's so relentlessly cheerful and fun, and even in the darkest of hours, he can bring a smile to everyone's face. From Felix to Lrmeka and Max, and anyone else around them. As much as they might get exasperated by his sheer stupidity, it just wouldn't be the same without Snorri around. He also hits like a bus. If Gotrek is Goku, then Snorri is Vegeta. He's never really allowed to win the final big battle, but a lot of the time he looks even cooler than Gotrek and will still be instrumental in victory. When he's not fighting, him and Gotrek like to get into headbutting contests. This is where they get really drunk and headbutt each other until someone passes out. That's probably a good indication of his main role in these books. He brings some comedy to the stories while still being badass enough to keep up with the 2 leads. His second main role is to make you incredibly depressed whenever we get any amount of time in Snorri's point of view. I mean, it makes his character a lot better for it than if he was just happy, strong idiot, but the first time I was reading a book from Snorri's point of view, my exact reactions were, "Ah, hell yeah, it's about Snorri now," followed by, "I'm gonna go lie down and blankly stare at the ceiling for a few hours now in the span of about 5 seconds. And I really want to talk about the second to last book in the series because it's got a really good moment between Gotrek and Snorri, but I don't want to spoil it. I also don't want to spend the rest of this video weeping into my microphone.
Snorri can't remember right now.
Please. Snorri's either gonna bring a smile to your face and get a laugh out of you when he shows up, or crush your hearts into tiny pieces. There's no
I see.
Best dwarf, best slayer, someone please.
He's got a very tragic backstory.
Warhammer, please, for the love of God, give me more Snorri Nosebiter. Something needs to fill that hole in my heart. And if you know what you can call the main cast, there's a ton of really cool side characters that are only in 1 book each. For example, in Elf Slayer, there's this high elf who has this really defining character moment that, without spoiling because it'll ruin the story, even the most diehard elf hater would salute him for what he's doing. And I'm not just saying that as an elf simp. Trust me, what this elf does is goddamn heroic. So instead, let's just share a couple of cool stories about what Gotrek and Felix have done, and wait. I forgot about Thanquol. Thanquol is a Scandinavian seer who can best be described as living proof that you can fail upwards. He's
what the hell?
Video, both because I can give him a mini do or don't like Nagash, and because he's just so fun to talk about. But he's the Scaveniest Skaven who ever Skavened, and he features fairly frequently in the early Gotrek and Felix books. On the one hand, he's a hell of a mage who snorts warpstone on the regular.
Assuming he's a villain?
Strength. On the other hand, he's a goddamn moron who sabotages his own plans because he thinks it'll give him more power over the other Skaven.
So he's a crackhead.
There's 3 books in the series about the Skaven trying to take over Nuln. At least I think it's 3, but I read them over the course of like 3 weeks, so it could be 2 or 4, but I think it's 3. And while Thanquol is working with the other Skaven characters in that book, he writes Gotrek and Felix letters pretending to be a human informant about the Skaven. If you have a chance, please just read them online. You can find at least one of them on TV Tropes if you just search up Thanquol's letters to Gotrek and Felix. They, of course, immediately figure out that it's clearly a Skaven doing this and are a little bit concerned.
That'd be pretty obvious, wouldn't it?
They figure, fuck it, and help Thanquol ruin the plans of Thanquol's allies. Which will supposedly help Thanquol become more powerful, but in practice, he just keeps weakening his own forces. What a silly guy. He shows up more often, and every single time he does, the books get even better, and about 10 times as funny as they were before. Okay, now I'm going to tell you some anecdotes.
So he's just a crazy Skaven that sabotages himself, even though he's a villain?
Talking about the stories. So if you still want to be spoiler-free, then skip to the next part of the video. Aren't chapters a great feature? Anyways, how about... Yeah, we'll listen to him. Relentlessly thirsty for Felix. You heard me. Gotrek and Felix end up in Lrmeka and fight some vampires as part of the greater story. The B plot is the vampire's point of view and what she's doing, but it also feels kind of like the C plot of the book is how badly this mummy woman wants Felix's meat. I'm not kidding.
Whoa! Oh my god!
If I still had skin, you would be my husband or some shit. She's also such a badass on her own that Gotrek outright says if she wasn't undead, he'd marry the 2 of them and Felix would have no input on the matter. That's how dwarf about the undead, let alone well, and the fact that Gotrek dislikes damn near everyone whose name isn't Snorri or Felix. Tragically,
Holy shit.
shipping it because she is again a mummy, but...
Yeah, I mean...
And while I'm leaving you all to figure out if I understand Gotrek's view on the matter of the Tomb Queens, how about the time Gotrek and Felix met their body doubles? They went to this dwarf hold that was basically auctioning off their hold's treasure in exchange for help retaking it. Since at the time of the novel, what they actually controlled of the hold was basically the outside door and a tavern they built around it to attract customers. Very dwarf-like, would certainly get an entry in the book, and Gotrek makes sure to call everyone involved a massive pussy. But there's violence to be had, so Gotrek still goes in, and they meet who else but another dwarf slayer with a rememberer to immortalize his own death. Felix and the human commiserate over their suicidal companions, and Gotrek is slightly nicer to the slayer because they're pretty much the only group of people on the planet the bastard can relate to. Then they keep suspiciously wandering into death traps over and over and over until they find out that, wait a minute, the other dwarf's rememberer was trying to get his slayer killed to be free of his own oath. Gotrek and Felix were both unfortunate enough to be in the way, and some asshole mercenary was going to pay the rememberer big time to kill him. Considering that it's a short story and not a proper book this takes place in, you can probably guess how this ends up for everyone involved that isn't Gotrek or Felix.
Right.
And last story, and this is a big one, how about how Gotrek ended up in the mortal realms? Now this is incredibly spoiler heavy because it's all about the last Gotrek and Felix book, which again I have not finished, but my eternal hatred towards myself means I looked it up like a goddamn clown because I couldn't help myself at first, and now I'm forcing it onto all of you as a way of consoling myself. If nothing else, we both know we made it into Age of Sigmar, so there's only so much in the way of true spoilers to be had, I guess. Anyway, so, Gotrek and Felix found out that, surprise, the dwarf god Grimnir was grooming Gotrek. No, not like Mod, but to become Grimnir 2.0. And then also, by the way, they need to stop Be'lakor from ascending to godhood if they could.
Be'lakor?
Oh. And also, there's one greater demon of each chaos god present, including a bloodthirster that has some personal history with the two. If you remember to the start of this rambling video, it's the one Felix threw knockoff Mjolnir at. He remembers that they caused him, and he's ready to take revenge. Unfortunately for the demons, Gotrek is able to stop Be'lakor with help from Felix. He does this by slapping the shit out of Be'lakor with the bloodthirster.
Oh no!
God, so cool. And then he takes Grimnir's place in holding back the tides of the warp, which, because it's the end times, is naturally changed to getting lost in the warp while chaos overtakes the world anyways. Of course, how did Gotrek survive all of this? Even the gods of the old world died. How did he survive? Have you been missing everything I've said so far? He's Gotrek freaking Garnison. You can't kill Gotrek. So Gotrek started killing demons. And more demons. And then more demons. He killed demons for so long that eventually he stumbled his way into Age of Sigmar. But you know what the thing about that is? At a certain point, he stopped fighting demons because they just kept leaving him alone. He says they were probably bored of fighting him. Realistically, the Chaos Gods were shitting their pants at the man with the demon-killing axe wandering around their house, murdering everything they sent at him. Really? And thus do we get to the end of Gotrek and Felix. For now, anyways.
So eventually, they just swamped him so hard, he fucking killed so many fucking demons that all the Chaos Gods in the realm were like, fuck it, just leave him alone. Just don't tempt him. Don't poke the bear, you know? Just fucking let him leave, you know? He'll go out on his own accord. Holy shit. You know, just fucking leave him be. Well, that's funny as fuck, dude. I think that's hilarious.
Murdering everything they sent at him. And thus do we get to the end of Gotrek and Felix. For now, anyways. Gotrek figured out that a lot of the Stormcast Eternals in the Mortal Realms were once heroes from
FTL soundtrack.
After all. And even if Felix isn't one of them, he's not resting until he finds his best friend. And his axe. As for Gotrek's rules, I thought about doing a do or don't mini thing here, but I don't really have much to say. He's expensive as all hell and slow, but he's almost impossible to kill, and anything that enters melee range with him just isn't coming out. Kite him and fight every single ranged attack you have at him, otherwise you're just gonna lose the match. If you're playing Gotrek, just send him on into the biggest blob of enemies you can find or the biggest, scariest looking monster. Who knows, maybe you'll find the one person that plays AOS that hasn't heard of Gotrek.
10 in bravery.
The smug look off your opponent's face when your lone dwarf wipes out their Death Star model. And
holy shit.
This glorified slideshow on the legendary Gotrek Garrison and Felix Jaeger, the single best Warhammer characters ever written, aside from, of course, their friend Snorri. Tune in next time for, I don't know, a video about another Warhammer fantasy character or something. Phone company. Thank you, of course, to my wonderful channel.
God damn.
You were like Gotrek to my Felix, letting me survive.
Oh, Gotrek to my Felix.
World we live in. Don't think about that analogy too much. If you'd like to,
I was gonna say, wait, what?
Either way, thanks for watching and take care out there.
Wow, guys, that was awesome. I think there's a little lab here at the end. Let's see.
I'm just gonna tell you all straight up, Gotrek can take on any Primarch as of AOS. Hell, towards the end times, he probably could have done it already, but as of AOS, he for sure can. Like, there's not a shred of doubt in my mind. If Horus and Gotrek walked into a room and fought to the death, the one walking out is gonna be the angry dwarf complaining about how shoddy even the human demigods
I could see that. I could honestly kind of see that. Like, scale-wise, the shit that he's fought and come out of and lived, yeah, I could potentially even maybe see that. That's fucking pretty crazy, man. What an interesting character. Gotrek and Felix by PancreasNoWork. Very, very interesting duo. Again, not really like Cyphus Kane at all. I don't see the comparison there. I don't know if people make a comparison often. Obviously, this is the first time I've heard of it in this video, but I don't really see the comparison there. They both very much seem like their own type of characters, you know what I'm saying? Between, like, obviously Kane and Jurgen and, you know, Gotrek and Felix here. I feel like they're very much their own types of characters. They're not really similar in any sense. Maybe like in terms of like story arc, but even like not really to me, maybe. Again, I haven't read the books, so I don't know like in depth any of the knowledge or anything. I'll obviously have to see for myself at some point. But no, I thought that was a great video. PancreasNoWork, obviously knocking it out of the water again there. Love the music choices he picks throughout these videos, the visuals. His narration style is really, really good, but it is fast, so I'm trying not to like talk too much throughout the video, try not to pause a ton throughout it, just because he does speak a little bit faster. His cadence is quicker, so you know, and I understand it too, because if he slowed it down, it would be like an hour-long video straight up. So for his sake, I completely get it. You know, but I didn't want to like speak over him too much in that. But no, I thought that was a great video. Yeah, obviously, if you guys enjoyed, make sure you leave a like, subscribe for more content from me, and of course, leave your recommendations down in the comments below. Big thank you to all of our members, all of our Hastati, our Principe, Dagenhart, and Hobbit, and of course, our Prefect Fear. I appreciate you guys. You guys inspire me to make more content for you guys every single day, of course. And with that, guys, without any further delay, this has been Centurion. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace, guys.